The moment Camille Hartley's ID hit the airport floor, tossed there by a smirking attendant, something shifted in the air. Silence fell as onlookers held their breath. What they saw was a successful black CEO in a white suit being publicly humiliated. What they missed was the calculating gleam in her eyes as she calmly retrieved her passport. For 15 years, Camille had navigated boardrooms where she was the only woman of color, building a tech empire from nothing but determination and brilliant code. Now on the verge of closing a historic $4.3 billion merger, this random incident threatened everything she'd built. But while her opponents celebrated what they thought was her downfall, Camille was already 3 moves ahead. They had just handed her the key to their undoing, and by morning, the power dynamics of an entire industry would be irreversibly changed. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today, and if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed. The morning light streamed through the massive glass windows of the international terminal, casting long shadows across the polished floor. Camille Hartley moved through the bustling airport with practiced ease. Her pristine white suit, a stark contrast against the sea of casual travelers. Her heels clicked rhythmically against the marble as she checked her phone one more time. Final adjustments to Section 4.8 complete. Legal has signed off. Morris team confirmed 9 a.m. arrival at headquarters, read the text from her assistant Nia. Camille allowed herself a small smile. After 2 years of negotiations, countless sleepless nights, and meetings across 3 continents, the $4.3 billion merger was hours away from completion. Her company, Hartley Innovations, was about to make history. "We're ready," she texted back, tucking her phone into her designer handbag. As she walked toward the premium check-in counter, Camille noticed a few double takes from passengers seated in the waiting area. A middle-aged man in a business suit nudged his colleague and whispered something while glancing in her direction. A woman hastily pulled up something on her phone, then looked up at Camille with wide eyes. "That's her," the woman whispered loudly to her companion. "The one from the Forbes cover." Camille maintained her steady pace, her expression neutral. Public recognition was still something she was adjusting to, even after her company's meteoric rise and her face gracing the covers of major business magazines. Near the security checkpoint, a young black girl, no more than 10 years old, stared at Camille with undisguised awe. The girl tugged at her mother's sleeve and pointed. The mother, noticing Camille, offered an apologetic smile. "I'm sorry," the mother said. "Jasmine recognized you from her school project on women in tech. You're something of a hero to her." Camille's professional mask softened. She knelt slightly to meet the girl's eyes. "What's your project about, Jasmine?" "Women who change technology," the girl replied, suddenly shy. "My teacher said you're making history." "Well," Camille said, "we're certainly trying." She pulled out a business card and handed it to the girl. "When you're ready for an internship in about 10 years, call that number." The girl's face lit up as Camille continued toward the check-in counter. The brief interaction had lifted her spirits, a reminder of why all the pressure and scrutiny were worth it. As Camille approached the premium check-in area, she noticed the shift in energy. 2 staff members behind the counter exchanged glances as she walked up. The woman at the counter, whose name tag read Marissa, straightened her posture and gave Camille a once-over that was anything but welcoming. "Good morning," Camille said, with a professional smile. "I have a private flight scheduled for 7:30. Marissa tapped at her keyboard with exaggerated slowness. "Name?" "Camille Hartley." More deliberate typing. A raised eyebrow. "Hartley Innovations?" "That's correct." Marissa's eyes narrowed slightly. "I see you're listed for a private departure through the executive terminal. That's unusual for this counter." "The arrangements were made through our corporate travel office," Camille explained, maintaining her calm. "I believe everything should be in order." "I'll need to see some ID," Marissa said, her tone suddenly curt. Camille reached into her bag and produced her passport along with her clearance documents. She placed them on the counter with practiced efficiency. Marissa picked up the passport, examining it with exaggerated scrutiny. She flipped through the pages, then looked back at Camille with a smirk that made something cold settle in Camille's stomach. "This is really yours?" Marissa asked, her voice loud enough to draw attention from nearby travelers. Camille's expression remained neutral. Yes, it is. Marissa held the passport between two fingers, as if it were something distasteful. Then, with a flick of her wrist, she tossed it onto the floor in front of the counter. The passport slid several feet across the polished tiles, coming to rest near the toe of Camille's shoe. "Pick it up if it's really yours, lady," Marissa said, her voice cutting through the sudden hush. Time seemed to slow. Camille felt the eyes of everyone in the vicinity turn toward her. From the corner of her eye, she saw another counteragent, covering a laugh with her hand. A security guard shifted uncomfortably but made no move to intervene. The silence expanded, filling the space with tension as thick as fog. Camille's mind raced through every possible response: the sharp retort, the demand to speak to a manager, the phone call to legal that could be made in seconds. Instead, she took a deep breath. With deliberate slowness, Camille bent down, her movements graceful and measured. She picked up her passport, straightened, and looked Marissa directly in the eyes. "Thank you," Camille said, her voice quiet but clear. "Now, may I please check in for my flight?" Marissa's smirk faltered slightly in the face of Camille's composure. Several feet away, an older woman with silver hair had her phone raised, clearly recording the interaction. "We'll need to do some additional verification," Marissa said, her tone still dismissive, but less certain. "Your credentials are unclear." "I see," Camille said, placing her passport back on the counter. "Please proceed." From behind her, Camille heard a man's voice, low but distinct. "That's the woman behind the Hartley-Morris tech merger, right?" The speaker was a TSA officer named Andrew, judging by his badge, speaking to a colleague. "Yeah," his colleague responded. "The one closing the big deal today." Before Camille could process this, a security supervisor approached. "Ms. Hartley, we need to perform a random security check. If you'll come with me, please." "Random," Camille repeated, the word flat. "Yes, ma'am. Just a standard procedure." Camille nodded and followed the supervisor to a small security area off to the side. As they walked, she felt her phone vibrate in her bag. When they reached the security room, she glanced at the screen. It was Blake Morris, CEO of Morris Technologies and her counterpart in the merger. "Ms. Hartley," the security officer said, "we'll need to check your bags and—" "Excuse me," Camille interrupted, holding up one finger. "I need to take this call. It's urgent business." The officer hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. Camille answered the phone. "Blake, good morning." "Camille." Blake's voice was tense. "Something's happening. Just got word that Walter's having second thoughts about the merger terms. He's suggesting we postpone. What happened at the airport? There are rumors." Camille's face remained impassive, but her grip on the phone tightened. "I'll be there in 30 minutes, Blake. Nothing's changing. Tell Walter I'm looking forward to addressing his concerns in person." She ended the call and looked back at the security officer, her mind already calculating, adjusting, planning her next move. "Now," she said, "let's get this over with, shall we? I have a meeting to attend." Rain pelted against the windows of the tiny apartment in Southside Chicago. 14-year-old Camille Hartley sat cross-legged on her narrow bed, a dog-eared math textbook open beside her as she sketched in a worn notebook. The room was sparse: a bed, a desk made from milk crates and a plywood board, and a small bookshelf filled with library books. Mrs. Dawson, her foster mother, poked her head through the doorway. "Still at those drawings, Camille? Dinner's in 10. Camille nodded without looking up, her pencil moving in precise lines across the paper. On the page, a complex diagram was taking shape, part machine, part architectural drawing. "Don't forget you've got to help with dishes tonight," Mrs. Dawson added before disappearing down the hallway. Camille barely registered the words. In her mind, she was building something, a system, a solution, far away from this small room and the uncertain life that had been hers since her parents' car accident 3 years ago. The next day, Camille slipped into the back row of the community library, her backpack heavy with books. She pulled out her notebook, flipping to her latest design. "That's quite impressive," said a deep voice beside her. Camille startled, looking up to find Mr. Bradford, the librarian, studying her drawing with genuine interest. He was tall with salt and pepper hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "What is it?" he asked. It's a database system," Camille explained hesitantly, "but with a visual interface that could make searching more intuitive." Mr. Bradford's eyebrows rose. "You understand database architecture?" Camille shrugged. "I read about it. I think it could be better." A slow smile spread across the librarian's face. "Wait here," he said, disappearing into the stacks. He returned moments later with a thick book. "Introduction to Coding, Python Fundamentals." "Think you might be ready for this," Mr. Bradford said, placing it in front of her. "Come by on Thursdays after school. I run a small coding group in the computer lab." That moment, the weight of the book, the first person who saw beyond the quiet foster kid, would remain etched in Camille's memory for decades to come. The private waiting room at the airport was quiet, except for the low murmur of a news broadcast on the wall-mounted television. Camille sat alone, her posture perfect despite the morning's events. On the screen, a business analyst was gesturing enthusiastically. What industry insiders are calling the tech merger of the decade. Hartley Innovations' groundbreaking data, visualization systems combined with Morris Technologies' market reach could reshape how businesses interact with complex information. CEO Camille Hartley is expected to. Camille's phone rang, cutting through her thoughts. Naya's name flashed on the screen. "They've cleared you for departure in 15 minutes, Naya said without preamble. "What the hell happened, Camille?" "The pilot said there was some kind of issue at check-in." "A minor inconvenience," Camille replied, her voice measured. "Minor?" Nia's voice rose. "I'm seeing texts from people who were there. They're saying some counteragent threw your ID on the floor, in front of everyone." Camille closed her eyes briefly. News travels fast. This is completely unacceptable. Do I need to alert PR? Legal? This kind of disrespect? Not yet, Camille interrupted. Let's watch who leaks it first. This could work in our favor. A beat of silence. You're too calm about this. Anger is a luxury I can't afford today, Nia. Not with Walter threatening to back out. Wait, what? Walter's backing out? Nia's voice sharpened. The Morris chairman? Since when? Since about 10 minutes ago, apparently. Blake just called. I need you to pull all the contingency files we prepared and get me everything we have on Walter's recent investments. As Camille spoke, she noticed a woman seated across the hallway, seemingly absorbed in a magazine but glancing up occasionally in Camille's direction. Something about her, the quality of her attention perhaps, set off Camille's internal alarm. I'll have everything ready, Nia promised. But Camille, this airport thing, you can't just let it slide. I never said I would, Camille replied, her voice soft but steel-edged. I'm just choosing my battlefield. After ending the call, Camille returned her attention to the mystery woman, who was now speaking quietly into her phone. There was something familiar about her, though Camille couldn't place it. The incident at the check-in counter had triggered a cascade of memories, moments when Camille had been dismissed, overlooked, or deliberately undermined. She remembered her first major pitch to venture capitalists 5 years earlier. She and her white co-founder James had prepared for weeks, but when they entered the conference room, every question was directed at James, despite Camille being the technical founder and CEO. And who handles the actual development? One investor had asked James, despite Camille's introduction as the chief architect of the system. Actually, James had said, gesturing to Camille, she's the brain behind all of it. I just handle the business side. The investor had looked surprised, then skeptical, before turning back to James with his next question. Camille's phone buzzed with another call from Naya. There's a reporter from Tech Insider calling for comment on an incident at the airport, Nia said. What do you want me to tell them? No comment at this time, Camille replied. But keep track of who's calling. This will be important later. Got it. Your flight's ready whenever you are. Camille stood, smoothing her white suit. As she gathered her belongings, Nia's earlier words echoed in her mind. You always keep your head up. But how long do we swallow this? Camille had answered with conviction. Until we buy the whole table. And she had meant it. Each slight, each dismissal, each moment of having to prove herself beyond what any of her white male counterparts ever faced. They all fueled her determination. Not just to succeed, but to change the game entirely. As she walked toward the exit, her phone chimed with a text message from an unknown number. "You're being watched. Don't go to the boardroom tomorrow." Camille paused, reading the message twice. She glanced around the waiting area, but the mystery woman was gone. With a slight frown, Camille pocketed her phone and continued toward her gate, her mind already calculating who might have sent the warning and why. Back at her company headquarters, Camille's office occupied the corner of the top floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city skyline. The space was minimalist but warm, modern furniture in rich browns and deep blues, abstract art on the walls, and a large desk of polished walnut. As Camille stepped off the elevator, Nia rose from her desk in the outer office. Tall and elegant, in a charcoal pantsuit, Nia had been with Camille since the company's early days, rising from executive assistant to becoming Camille's most trusted advisor. "The board's asking for an emergency meeting at 11, Nia said, walking alongside Camille. "I told them you had back-to-back calls until noon." "Good," Camille replied. "That gives us time to prepare. What else?" Legal sent over the updated merger documents. "I've highlighted the changes. PR wants to know if you're making a statement about the airport incident. It's starting to circulate online." Camille nodded, noting how some employees in the open workspace glanced at her with a mixture of admiration and something else. Discomfort, perhaps. News was spreading inside the company, too. "Let's hold off on any statements until after I speak with the board," Camille said. "And Nia, find out everything you can about a woman named Vanessa from Morris Technologies board. I think she was at the airport this morning." In her office, Camille settled behind her desk and pulled up the security protocols for the building. "Something doesn't add up," she murmured to herself, reviewing the visitor logs from the past week. A knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. It was Bradley Kilner, one of the senior board members, a tall man in his 60s with silver hair and the confidence of old money. "Camille," he said without waiting for an invitation, "we need to talk before the board meeting." She gestured to the chair across from her desk. "What can I help you with, Brad?" Kilner sat down, straightening his tie. "I've heard about what happened at the airport. Unfortunate business." "Yes," Camille agreed, her tone neutral. "Unfortunate." "The timing couldn't be worse," he continued. "With the merger so close, any instability could be problematic." Camille's eyes narrowed slightly. "Instability?" "Public perception matters," Kilner said, his tone patronizing. "The board is concerned that this incident might affect investor confidence. There's talk of postponing the merger announcement, perhaps reevaluating the leadership structure during the transition." "I see," Camille said, her voice cool. "And when was this discussed? I don't recall a board meeting being called." Kilner had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. "A few of us were simply discussing contingencies, given the circumstances." The circumstances being that an airport employee was openly discriminatory toward me. And now somehow that reflects on my leadership capabilities? "Now, Camille," Kilner said with a placating gesture, "no one is suggesting discrimination. These situations are often more complicated than they appear. The important thing is how we respond. A public confrontation would not serve the company's interests." "Thank you for your concern, Brad," Camille said, rising from her chair. "I'll be sure to address the board's concerns at the meeting. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to prepare." After Kilner left, Camille called Nia into her office. "I need the security footage from the airport," she said. "Get our legal team on it immediately." An hour later, Nia returned with troubling news. "The airport claims the security camera covering that check-in counter wasn't working this morning," she reported. "Convenient timing." "Too convenient," Camille agreed. "Who made the request for the footage?" "That's the interesting part," Nia said, handing Camille a note. "The request was routed through our legal department, but none of our attorneys initiated it. Someone used Tim Wilson's credentials. Camille frowned. Tim's on vacation in Hawaii. His access should be suspended. Exactly. Someone internal is covering tracks. We have a mole, Camille said quietly. Probably more than one. Before Nia could respond, Camille's phone chimed with a notification. It was another message from the unknown number. The boardroom is bugged. Trust no one except Nia. Vanessa Morris is not who you think. Camille showed the message to Nia, whose eyes widened. Morris, as in Morris Technologies, Camille confirmed. I think our mystery woman from the airport is related to the family behind our merger partners. The question is, what game is she playing? As the morning wore on, Camille pieced together a troubling picture. Someone had orchestrated the airport incident, knowing it would create a distraction and potentially derail the merger. The same someone likely had access to the company's internal systems and possibly the board. By the time the board meeting was set to begin, Camille had formed a plan. She wouldn't be defensive. She wouldn't be reactive. Instead, she would do what she had always done when faced with those who underestimated her. She would surprise them. With Nia at her side, Camille walked toward the boardroom, her white suit immaculate, her expression resolute. Whatever forces were aligned against her, they were about to learn a crucial lesson. The world didn't know her yet. But they would soon. The board meeting had concluded less than an hour ago, yet the tension still hung in the air of Hartley Innovations' headquarters. Camille walked through the sleek hallway toward her office, the floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city below. A steady rain had begun to fall, drops racing down the glass like tears. As she passed through the open workspace, conversations hushed momentarily. Employees nodded respectfully, some offering encouraging smiles. Others, however, averted their eyes with subtle discomfort. News of the airport incident had spread like wildfire through the company, and Camille could read the room like a book. Support, uncertainty, and something more concerning. Fear. Nia fell into step beside her. The emergency protocols are in place, she said quietly. We've locked down all sensitive merger documents and implemented the new security clearances. Good, Camille replied. Any word from Morris Technologies? Blake called twice while you were in with the board. He wants a private meeting, off-site. Camille nodded, processing this information. Set it up for tonight, somewhere quiet. So. They entered Camille's office. Nia closed the door behind them and leaned against it. So are we going to talk about what happened in there? Camille set her tablet on the desk and turned to face her assistant. Kilner and Thomas want to postpone the merger announcement. They claim it's market timing, but we both know what this is about. They're using the airport incident as leverage, Nia said, her eyes flashing with anger. That's beyond low. It's predictable, Camille replied, removing her suit jacket and hanging it carefully on the back of her chair. But there's something else happening. The board seemed too prepared, like they were working from a script. Kilner specifically mentioned public behavior concerns before any news about the airport had officially broken. Nia frowned. You think they knew it was going to happen? I think someone wanted it to happen, and that same someone made sure the board would hear about it immediately. Camille moved to the window, watching the rain intensify. We need to find out who accessed Tim's credentials, and we need to do it quietly. For the next hour, Camille and Nia worked methodically, reviewing security logs and access records. It was tedious work, but Camille had built her company on attention to detail. Got something, Nia said eventually, looking up from her tablet. 3 days ago, at 2:17 a.m., someone logged into our secure server using Tim's credentials. The IP address traces back to... She paused, her expression shifting to disbelief. Jessica Palmer's home network. Jessica? Camille raised an eyebrow. My executive assistant before you? The same. She's working in communications now. Camille leaned back in her chair, pieces falling into place. Jessica, who always stayed late, who volunteered for every executive meeting, who dated Thomas's nephew briefly last year, and who has access to most of our internal communications, Nia added. Should we confront her? Not yet, Camille said after a moment. If she's our mole, she's working for someone. I want to know who before we tip our hand. She pulled up Jessica's employee file on her screen. Let's keep an eye on her. Flag her outgoing communications, but don't block them. If she's feeding information to someone, I want to know what and to whom. Their strategy session was interrupted by Camille's private line. The caller ID showed unknown, but something told Camille to answer. Camille Hartley speaking. Ms. Hartley, came a smooth female voice. This is Vanessa Winters. I believe we saw each other at the airport this morning. I wonder if you might have time for coffee this afternoon? Camille's eyes met Nia's across the desk. Vanessa Winters, the mystery woman from the airport. But not apparently a Morris. I have a rather tight schedule today, Ms. Winters, Camille replied carefully. Perhaps you could tell me what this is regarding. Let's just say I have information that might interest you regarding your current situation. The Parker Hotel, 4 o'clock. Their lobby lounge is discreet. After a brief pause, Camille agreed. As she ended the call, Nia was already typing on her tablet. Vanessa Winters, Nia read. 42, board member at Archer Global Investments. Previously VP of Strategic Development at, Morris Technologies, until 3 years ago. Now she sits on the board of their biggest competitor. Interesting timing for her to appear, Camille mused. Run a deeper background check. I want to know everything about Ms. Winters before I meet her. At precisely 3:55 p.m., Camille entered the elegant lobby of the Parker Hotel. The lounge area was a study in understated luxury, plush seating in muted tones, soft lighting, and discreet service. Perfect for conversations meant to stay private. Vanessa Winters was already there, seated in a corner with her back to the wall, a position that allowed her to see everyone who entered. She was elegantly dressed in a navy blue dress, her dark hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail. As Camille approached, Vanessa's lips curved into a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Ms. Hartley, she said, extending her hand. Thank you for making the time. Camille shook her hand firmly. I'm curious about what brings a board member of Archer Global to seek me out on today of all days. Vanessa gestured to the seat across from her. Please, I've taken the liberty of ordering tea. Once they were settled, Vanessa leaned forward slightly. I'll be direct, Ms. Hartley. I know about the incident at the airport this morning, and I know about the board's emergency meeting. Word travels fast in our circles. And why would that be of interest to Archer Global? Camille asked, her tone pleasant but guarded. Because your merger with Morris Technologies directly impacts the competitive landscape. My board has been monitoring the situation closely. Vanessa paused as the server set down a tray with tea. When they were alone again, she continued. But my interest is more personal. I spent 7 years at Morris. I know how they operate. And how is that? Vanessa's smile tightened. Let's just say that Walter Morris has a history of using situations like yours to renegotiate terms at the 11th hour. The airport incident provides perfect cover for them to claim concerns about stability and public image. Camille took a sip of tea, revealing nothing. That's quite an allegation. It's not an allegation. It's a pattern. Vanessa set down her cup. 3 years ago, I led a similar merger negotiation. When it came time to sign, Walter suddenly had concerns about my leadership approach. He used a minor public disagreement I'd had with a client as evidence that I wasn't the right person to help lead the merged company. And yet here you are, Camille observed. At a competitor. Yes, here I am. Vanessa's expression hardened momentarily, before softening into something that looked almost like concern. I admire what you've built, Camille. Truly. And I'd hate to see Morris Technologies use this incident to edge you out of what you've created. The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, with Vanessa subtly probing for information about Camille's next moves. Camille revealed little, but gathered much, including the distinct impression that Vanessa was there on behalf of Archer Global to assess whether Hartley Innovations might soon be vulnerable to acquisition. As they prepared to part ways, Camille decided on a calculated risk. "Between us," she said, lowering her voice, "the board's concerns have given me pause. I've built this company from nothing. Perhaps it's time to consider whether staying on through the merger is in everyone's best interest." Vanessa's eyes widened, almost imperceptibly, a flash of triumph quickly masked. "That would be a significant decision. If you do consider stepping aside, I hope you'll keep our conversation in mind. Archer Global has great respect for innovators like yourself." "I appreciate that," Camille replied smoothly. "I should be going. I have a flight to catch." Outside the hotel, Camille texted Nia. She took the bait. "Track any unusual trading activity around our stock in the next 24 hours. The private airfield was quiet as Camille boarded the sleek jet bearing her company's logo. Only Nia knew her real destination, not the New York meeting on her official calendar, but a private estate in Connecticut where Jackson Hodge and his team of investors were waiting. 3 years ago, Hodge Capital had passed on funding Hartley Innovations, telling Camille that her vision was interesting, but perhaps too ambitious. Now, with her company's valuation in the billions, Jackson Hodge was eager to get involved in the merger, assuming the terms were favorable. As the jet lifted off, Camille reviewed her presentation one last time. She was betting that news of the airport incident and whispers of board unrest would reach Hodge soon. Her goal was to get ahead of the narrative. 4 hours later, she was being shown into a wood-paneled study where Jackson Hodge, silver-haired, tanned, and exuding old, money confidence, waited with 2 of his partners. "Camille," he said warmly, rising to greet her. "A pleasure to finally meet in person. Though I must say we weren't expecting you until next week." "Circumstances change," Camille replied with a smile. "And I believe in addressing potential concerns directly." Hodge's expression shifted subtly. "I see. You're referring to this morning's incident." "News travels fast," Camille said, echoing Vanessa's earlier words. "In our world, it does." Hodge gestured to a chair. "Please sit. Tell us what really happened." For the next 2 hours, Camille laid out not just the airport incident, but her entire strategy for the merger, including contingencies for the very situation she now faced. She was direct, thorough, and confident. By the time she finished, Hodge and his partners were leaning forward, engaged. "You've anticipated every move," Hodge said, clearly impressed, including Walter's potential hesitation. "I've done my homework," Camille replied, "and I've learned to prepare for both the expected and the unexpected." Hodge exchanged glances with his partners before turning back to Camille. "We're in. On your terms. Our fund will back your position in the merger, regardless of what Walter or your board might try." As Camille left the estate, her phone buzzed with a news alert. The headline made her stomach tighten. "Tech CEO causes scene at airport. Witnesses report confrontation." She opened the article to find a completely twisted version of events, painting her as the aggressor who had demanded special treatment and berated staff. There was no mention of her ID being thrown on the floor. Camille immediately called Nia. "The PR leak hit. It's worse than we expected." "I saw it," Nia replied grimly. Taylor in Communications forwarded it to the entire executive team with a note saying, "FYI, concerning development." Taylor, who sits 3 desks away from Jessica Palmer? The very same. Camille took a deep breath. The rot is spreading. "When I get back, we move to phase 2. It's time to find out who's really pulling the strings." As her car sped back toward the airfield, Camille received a text from a number she hadn't seen in years. It was from Maxwell Reynolds, the media mogul she had successfully sued after one of his publications ran a hit piece about her early in her career. The message was brief. "This airport business, not your best look. Let's talk. I might be able to help. Tomorrow, 7 a.m., my office." Camille stared at the screen, a slight smile forming on her lips. Maxwell Reynolds never offered help without expecting something in return. But sometimes, the most unexpected allies emerged from former enemies. "Game on," she whispered to herself. as the city lights began to appear in the distance. Maxwell Reynolds' office occupied the entire top floor of the Reynolds Media Building, offering a commanding view of the city skyline. The space was a testament to old-school power: heavy mahogany furniture, walls lined with leather-bound books, and framed front pages of historic news events. Reynolds himself stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, a tumbler of amber liquid in hand despite the early hour. At 68, he remained imposing, tall, broad-shouldered, with a shock of white hair and piercing blue eyes that had stared down presidents and CEOs alike. "Camille," he said without turning as she entered, "you're looking well for someone in the middle of a PR nightmare." "Maxwell," she replied coolly. "Still drinking bourbon before breakfast, I see." He chuckled, finally facing her. "Some habits die hard. Have a seat." Camille remained standing. "You said you wanted to talk. I'm listening." Reynolds took a sip of his drink, studying her over the rim of his glass. 3 years ago, you sued my company for defamation and won. Cost me $7 million and a public apology. Your reporter fabricated quotes and implied I stole my core technology, Camille said. The evidence was irrefutable. Indeed it was. Reynolds set down his glass and moved to his desk. That lawsuit taught me something important about you, Camille Hartley. You don't just fight back, you win. He picked up a remote and turned on a large screen on the wall. Which is why I find this current situation so interesting. The screen displayed the same news story Camille had seen the previous night, with the inflammatory headline about her causing a scene at the airport. "This isn't journalism," Reynolds continued. "It's character assassination. Amateur work, really, but effective in the short term." Camille crossed her arms. "And you're showing me this because I think we might be able to help each other." Reynolds picked up a folder from his desk. "My investigative team has been looking into the connection between Morris Technologies and Archer Global. Fascinating stuff. Very hush-hush merger. Talks last year that suddenly fell apart." Camille's expression remained neutral, but her mind was racing. If Morris had been in talks with Archer before approaching Hartley Innovations, that changed everything. "What exactly are you proposing, Maxwell?" Reynolds smiled, a predator sensing opportunity. "An exclusive. The full story, not just about what happened at the airport, but why it happened, who orchestrated it, who benefits." He leaned forward. "In return, I want 2 things. First, exclusive access to you and your company for the next year as you navigate this merger. Second, dropping that little restraining order that keeps my reporters 100 feet from your headquarters." Camille considered his offer. Reynolds was manipulative and self-serving, but his media reach was unparalleled. And if he already had information about Morris and Archer, "I'll give you exclusive access to my story," she said finally. "But on my terms, you run the full security footage from the airport, which will be anonymously provided to you within the hour. You investigate who's behind this smear campaign without bias, and the restraining order stays in place for everyone except 2 reporters of my choosing." Reynolds' eyes narrowed. "You're not in a position to dictate terms, Camille." "Aren't I?" She pulled out her phone and showed him a screen. "This is a draft press release announcing Hartley Innovations' new partnership with Global News Network, your biggest competitor. 1 call, and they get what you're asking for." For a moment, tension crackled between them. Then Reynolds laughed, a genuine, appreciative laugh. "You don't disappoint, do you?" He extended his hand. "We have a deal." By afternoon, the entire narrative had begun to shift. A video had appeared online. Footage shot by the mother of the young girl, Camille, had spoken to at the airport. It clearly showed Marissa tossing Camille's ID to the floor and her calm response. The clip was going viral, with commentators praising Camille's dignity under pressure. Meanwhile, Reynolds' flagship news channel was running a special report on discrimination in corporate America, featuring the airport footage and interviews with other executives who had faced similar treatment. Camille watched it all unfold from her office, maintaining her focus on the merger negotiations. The public relations battle was important, but it was only one front in this war. "Nia," she called through the intercom. Get Senator James's office on the line. Minutes later, Camille was connected to Jamila Washington, Chief of Staff to Senator Ellen James and Camille's former college roommate. "Camille," Jamila said warmly, "I was about to call you. Ellen saw the airport video. She's livid." "It's bigger than one incident, Jamila," Camille replied. "This was orchestrated to derail a major business deal, and I think it goes all the way to the top. What do you need?" "The senator has been pushing for hearings on workplace discrimination in elite industries." "I'm ready to testify." There was a pause on the line. "That would be powerful, Camille. But the timing, people might see it as opportunistic." "Let them," Camille said firmly. "Sometimes you have to use the spotlight when it finds you." The hearing would give legal protection to others who want to come forward. "I'll talk to Ellen," Jamila promised. "But Camille, be careful. You're taking on some powerful interests." After the call, Camille received an update from her security team. The airport had suspended Marissa pending an investigation, and the staff had split into factions, some defending her actions, others distancing themselves. The company's stock had fluctuated wildly throughout the day as rumors about the merger's future spread through the market. Walter Morris had made no public statement, but insiders reported heated arguments within Morris Technologies' executive suite. By late afternoon, Camille had made her decision. Despite her PR team's concerns about fanning the flames, she scheduled a press conference for 5 p.m. The company auditorium was packed with reporters when Camille took the stage. She wore the same white suit from the airport, a deliberate choice that wasn't lost on the media. "Thank you all for coming," she began, her voice steady and clear. "I've called this press conference not to discuss a personal incident, but to address larger truths that many of us face daily." For the next 15 minutes, Camille spoke eloquently about perception, coded racism, and the subtle barriers that still existed in corporate America. She shared stories from her own journey, growing up in foster care, fighting for educational opportunities, building her company despite countless rejections. "What happened at that airport was not about me," she said toward the end. "It was about power, who is presumed to have it and who is presumed not to. It was about assumptions. Who belongs in first class, who deserves respect, who is believed." She paused, looking directly into the cameras. "I will not name names or point fingers today, but I will say this. Dignity is not negotiable. Respect is not optional, and success does not protect you from prejudice. It often makes you more of a target." As Camille concluded, the room erupted with questions. She answered several before her PR director ended the session. As she left the stage, her phone buzzed with a notification. Morris Technologies had issued a statement questioning her leadership under pressure and suggesting the merger timeline might need to be reevaluated. Back in her office, Camille found James Patterson waiting for her. As her co-founder and chief technology officer, James had been with her from the beginning, writing code in her apartment while she pitched to investors. "Hell of a speech," he said, his expression troubled. "But I'm worried, Cam. The board is split. Kilner's faction is pushing hard for you to step back from the merger negotiations." "Let them push," Camille replied, pouring herself a glass of water. "You don't understand. They're saying you've made this personal, that you're putting your agenda ahead of the company's interests." Camille turned to face him, her expression serious. "And what do you think, James?" He hesitated. "I think maybe it would help to let things cool down. Let the legal team handle the airport situation. Focus on closing the deal. So I should just be quiet? Pretend it never happened?" "That's not what I'm saying." "Yes, it is." Camille set down her glass. "And that's exactly what they want. For me to fold. To show that I can be intimidated. This isn't about intimidation, Cam. It's about strategy. About timing. If we fold now, we were never leading," Camille said firmly. "We were just temporarily holding space." Before James could respond, Nia knocked and entered the office. "Sorry to interrupt, but you both need to see this." She handed Camille a tablet displaying an email that had just been sent to the entire board. It was from two board members, Helen Rivera and David Scott, who had been notably silent during the emergency meeting. In light of recent events and after reviewing all available information, we wish to express our full confidence in Camille Hartley's leadership and her handling of the current situation. We believe attempts to use an incident of clear discrimination as leverage against her position in the merger negotiations are not only ethically questionable, but potentially legally actionable. Camille looked up from the tablet, meeting James's eyes. This changes things. He nodded slowly. With Rivera and Scott on record, Kilner's faction doesn't have the votes to force you out. Which means we proceed as planned, Camille said, a new determination in her voice. But with one significant change. She turned to her computer and pulled up a document, the detailed merger plan that had been 2 years in the making. With swift keystrokes, she began to make adjustments. "What are you doing?" James asked, moving to look over her shoulder. "Flipping the script," Camille replied, her fingers flying across the keyboard. "Morris thinks they can use this situation to take control, but they've overplayed their hand." As James and Nia watched, the document transformed before their eyes. What had been structured as a merger of equals was now reframed as an acquisition, with Hartley Innovations as the majority acquirer. "This is bold," James said finally. "Walter will never agree to this." "He might," Camille said, "when he sees the alternative." She turned to Nia. "Call Blake Morris. Tell him I need a private meeting tonight, just the two of us. And then, contact our legal team. I want them to prepare documents for both scenarios." As Nia left to make the calls, James shook his head in amazement. "You're really going to try to take control of Morris Technologies?" "I'm not trying," Camille replied, her confidence unwavering. "I'm doing it. They thought throwing my ID on the floor would break me. Instead, it's going to be the moment that changes everything," the intercom buzzed. "Camille," came Nia's urgent voice, "there's a courier here with a delivery. It's a subpoena." Camille and James exchanged looks of surprise. "Send them in," Camille directed. The courier, a young man in a pressed uniform, handed Camille an official envelope. "Ms. Hartley, you've been served." After he left, Camille opened the envelope and scanned the contents, her expression shifting from surprise to something almost like amusement. "What is it?" James asked. "A defamation lawsuit," Camille replied, setting down the papers. "Marissa, Thompson is suing me personally for defamation of character and causing loss of employment." "That's absurd," James exclaimed. "She's the one who—" "Exactly," Camille interrupted, a smile spreading across her face. "She just made a critical mistake." "I don't understand. How is being sued a good thing?" Camille picked up her phone. "Because now we get discovery. We can legally demand all the airport's records, including who Marissa spoke to before and after the incident. We can depose everyone involved under oath." Understanding dawned on James's face. "You think someone put her up to it? Both the original incident and now this lawsuit?" "I know they did," Camille said, already dialing. "And now we're going to find out who." As she waited for the call to connect, Camille moved to the window, gazing out at the city below. The pieces were falling into place. What her opponents had intended as a takedown was becoming her greatest opportunity. "Nadia," she said when her lawyer answered. "It's Camille. I've just been served with a defamation lawsuit and I couldn't be happier about it. Let's play chess." The morning light filtered through the blinds in Camille's home office as she examined the subpoena once more. Her spacious penthouse apartment offered a panoramic view of the city skyline, but her attention was fixed on the legal document in her hands. Defamation of character, intentional infliction of emotional distress, loss of employment and future earnings. She read aloud, her voice steady. Across from her, Nadia Wilson sat with perfect posture, her tailored charcoal suit as crisp as her legal reasoning. As Hartley Innovations' chief counsel for the past 5 years, Nadia had guided the company through countless legal challenges. But this was different. This was personal. "It's a desperate move," Nadia said, tapping her gold pen against her leather portfolio. "Marissa Thompson claims your press conference and the viral video have made her unemployable, subjected her to online harassment, and caused severe emotional distress. All because I picked up my ID from the floor and didn't say a word, Camille replied with a slight shake of her head. This isn't about the truth, Nadia said, leaning forward. It's about image. And you're winning. That's what scares them. Camille set the document down and moved to the window. Who's backing her? A check-in agent doesn't hire this level of legal representation on her own. The firm is Pattinson and Graves. They typically represent corporations, not individuals. Nadia flipped through her notes. We're looking into potential connections to Morris Technologies or Archer Global. Camille's phone buzzed with an incoming call from Nia. What's happening? You need to see this, Nia said without preamble. Every major network is running the story. The narrative is splitting down the middle. Half are supporting you, half are questioning your agenda. Send me the links, Camille replied, ending the call and turning to her tablet. The headlines told the story. Tech CEO's airport confrontation, standing up or publicity stunt. Wall Street wary, as Hartley-Morris merger faces uncertainty. Race in corporate America, the Camille Hartley debate. Social media was even more divided, with hashtags trending both in support and criticism of her. Video clips of her press conference were being shared widely, often edited to change the context of her words. The investors are getting nervous, Camille observed, scrolling through a financial news site reporting that several major funds had reduced their positions in both Hartley Innovations and Morris Technologies. This is exactly what they wanted, Nadia said. Create enough chaos and uncertainty that the merger falls apart on its own. Camille set down the tablet and moved to her desk, where a framed photograph stood next to her computer. It showed a young black woman in judicial robes, her expression serious but kind. Patricia Hartley, Camille's mother, had been a rising civil rights attorney before a fabricated ethics violation ended her career in the early 1990s. She died of cancer when Camille was 12, leaving behind a legacy of fighting for justice, and the painful lesson that the system didn't always protect those who challenged it. My mother was disbarred because she took on a police brutality case that powerful people wanted buried, Camille said, touching the frame lightly. They planted evidence, claimed she tampered with witnesses. By the time the truth came out, her reputation was destroyed. She never practiced law again. Nadia's expression softened. I didn't know. I won't let history repeat itself, Camille said, straightening her shoulders. We're not just responding to this lawsuit, we're countering it. Prepare a filing for racial discrimination, emotional distress, and interference with business advantage. Name Marissa, the airport authority, and the head of airport security. That's aggressive, Nadia noted, though her tone was approving. It's necessary. This was never about one incident or one person. It's about a pattern, and we're going to expose it. As Nadia left to prepare the countersuit, Camille called Blake Morris. Their meeting the previous night had been tense but productive. Blake, caught between loyalty to his father Walter and his belief in the merger's potential, had revealed that the board was deeply divided. Blake, I need to know where you stand now, Camille said when he answered. Things are escalating quickly. I saw the lawsuit, he replied, his voice tight. Walter's furious that you're creating a media circus instead of handling it privately. And what do you think? A pause. I think someone's playing us against each other, and it's working. Our stock is down 11% this morning. Then, we need to take control of the narrative, Camille said. Together, a joint statement reaffirming our commitment to the merger. Walter would never approve that right now. Then we go around him. You're the CEO, Blake. It's time to lead. After ending the call, Camille received an unexpected update from Nia. A group of former airport employees had reached out, offering to share their experiences of similar discriminatory practices. One mentioned explicit directives to scrutinize certain travelers who didn't look like they belonged in first-class or VIP areas. This is exactly what we need, Camille told her. Work with Nadia to get their statements. We're launching a campaign called Not Just Another Incident to show this is systemic. By midday, Camille's countersuit had been filed, and news of it spread rapidly through the business world. The aggressive move caught many by surprise, particularly the airport authority, which released a hasty statement about taking all allegations seriously and promising a thorough investigation. As Camille prepared for a virtual board meeting, a news alert flashed across her screen. 2 senior executives from Morris Technologies had abruptly resigned. The official reason was to pursue other opportunities, but anonymous sources claimed they had disagreed with Walter's handling of the merger situation. The board meeting began with Bradley Kilner attempting to set an agenda focused on damage control and leadership transition options. Camille, however, took control immediately. "Before we begin," she said firmly, "I want to address the elephant in the room. Some of you believe I should step back from this merger because of recent events. Others support my leadership. Rather than talking around the issue, let's address it directly." For the next 30 minutes, the board engaged in a frank discussion. Kilner's faction argued that the controversy was overshadowing the business deal. Helen Rivera countered that capitulating to pressure would set a dangerous precedent. Through it all, Camille remained composed, answering questions directly and laying out her strategy for moving forward. "The countersuit isn't just about vindication," she explained. "It's about discovery. We now have legal grounds to demand all communications related to the incident. If, as I suspect, this was orchestrated to derail our merger, we'll find evidence." By the end of the meeting, no formal vote had been taken, but the shift in energy was palpable. Even some of Kilner's allies seemed less certain of their position. As evening fell, Camille received a call from an unknown number. It was Andrew, the TSA officer who had recognized her at the airport. "Ms. Hartley," he said, his voice low. "I'm risking my job by calling you, but people need to know what's happening." Marissa didn't act alone. There are emails, instructions from management about maintaining standards, and additional verification for unusual passengers. It's all coded language, but everyone knows what it means. "Would you be willing to go on record?" Camille asked. "I can't, not officially. But I saved some of the emails. I'm sending them to you now. Just, please don't say where you got them." Minutes after the call ended, Camille's secure email pinged with a message containing several forwarded emails. What she read confirmed her suspicions, and worse. One email from a security director referred to her specifically as "White Suit Barbie trying to buy her way in." Camille immediately forwarded the emails to Nadia with instructions to authenticate them for potential use in the lawsuit. As she did, another message arrived, this one from Maxwell Reynolds. "Meeting tomorrow, 8 a.m. One of Marissa's former co-workers came to us with screenshots of a deleted social media post. You'll want to see this." Camille was about to respond when her doorbell rang. The building's security had not announced any visitors, which was unusual. Cautiously, she checked the security camera and saw a courier in a corporate uniform holding a package. After verifying his credentials, she accepted the package, a thick manila envelope with no return address. Inside was a stack of documents and a simple note, "Thought you should see this before it's too late." The documents appeared to be internal communications from her own company, emails, meeting minutes, and strategic planning notes related to the merger. As Camille flipped through them, her blood ran cold. Among them was a confidential memo addressed to Bradley Kilner from someone on her executive team, detailing how the airport incident could be leveraged to force a leadership change before the merger closed. The final page was a screenshot of a text message conversation. One of the numbers she recognized immediately as belonging to Reed Carver, her longest-serving board member and someone she had considered a mentor. The other number was unfamiliar, but the content was clear. "Plan in motion. Airport security will ensure she's randomly selected. Leaked to press already. By Monday, board will have no choice but to sideline her for merger negotiations. Compensation package as discussed? Board seat guaranteed? Yes. Plus options package once merger completes. Walter says timing is crucial. Must happen before." Final signatures. Camille sat motionless, the betrayal washing over her in waves. Reed Carver, the man who had championed her to investors in the early days, who had stood beside her through countless challenges, had orchestrated her public humiliation for personal gain. Her phone rang again. It was Naya. "Camille," her assistant said urgently. "Marissa's social media has gone viral. Maxwell's team found a deleted post where she bragged about putting that CEO in her place the night before you even arrived at the airport. She knew who you were before you got there, Camille. This was planned. I know, Camille replied, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions. And now we know who planned it. The morning sun had barely crested the horizon as Camille walked into Reed Carver's private office. Located in a separate building from Hartley Innovations headquarters, the space reflected his taste for understated luxury, handcrafted furniture, original artwork, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the financial district. Reed looked up from his desk with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. At 62, he maintained the trim physique and confident bearing of the former college athlete he had been. His silver hair was expertly cut, his navy suit perfectly tailored. "Camille," he said, rising. "This is a surprise. I thought you'd be preparing for the Morris meeting." "I was," she replied, closing the door behind her. "But something came up that couldn't wait." She placed the manila envelope on his desk. Reed glanced at it, his expression mildly curious but unconcerned. "What's this?" "Why don't you tell me?" Camille suggested, her tone conversational. "Or better yet, explain why you conspired with Walter Morris to sabotage me at the airport." The change in Reed's expression was subtle, a slight tightening around the eyes, a momentary tension in his jaw. But Camille caught it. 20 years in boardrooms had taught her to read the micro-expressions that often revealed more than words. "That's a serious accusation," Reed said carefully, making no move to open the envelope. "It's not an accusation. It's a fact." Camille held his gaze steadily. "The question is why? After all these years, why betray me now?" Reed's facade cracked slightly. He sank back into his chair, studying Camille with new wariness. "You always were too smart for your own good. Not smart enough, apparently. I trusted you." Reed sighed, a sound of resignation rather than remorse. "It wasn't personal, Camille. It was business. The merger as structured wasn't optimal for long-term growth. Morris Technologies needed stronger leadership at the helm." "Leadership like yours?" Camille asked, her voice dangerously quiet, like someone with experience navigating these waters. Reed leaned forward. "You're brilliant, Camille. A visionary. But this merger required someone with deeper connections, someone who speaks the language of old money and established power." "Someone white," Camille stated flatly. Reed's expression hardened. "Don't make this about race when it should have been. About numbers, about strategy, about what's best for the company you built." "And the board seat Walter promised you? The options package? Were those also what's best for the company?" A flicker of surprise crossed Reed's face. "You have been busy. Answer the question." Reed stood, moving to the window with the practiced ease of someone accustomed to controlling conversations. "Every decision I've made has been to secure Hartley Innovations' future. Yes, there were considerations for my role post-merger. That's standard in these situations. What's standard about hiring airport security to publicly humiliate me? About plotting with a rival CEO to undermine me? About betraying 20 years of trust?" Reed turned back to face her, his expression suddenly earnest. "You weren't ready to carry the weight this deal demands, Camille. You made it about race when it should have been about numbers, about market position, about the next decade of growth." Camille nodded slowly, as if considering his words. Then she reached into her jacket pocket and removed her phone. "Thank you for explaining your reasoning so clearly, Reed. I wanted to make sure I understood exactly why you did it." She turned the phone screen toward him, showing an active recording app. Reed's face drained of color. "You can't use that. It's inadmissible. I didn't consent." "This isn't for a court of law," Camille interrupted. "This is for the board, for our investors, for the team that's worked alongside us for years, believing in our integrity." Reed's expression shifted to cold anger. "You wouldn't dare. It would tank the stock, destroy the merger. Everything you've built would collapse." "Perhaps," Camille acknowledged. "Or perhaps people will finally see what I've been fighting against. All along, the assumption that someone like me doesn't belong at the table, let alone at its head." She picked up the envelope and turned to leave, then paused at the door. "One more thing. You're right that I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready for this level of betrayal from someone I considered family. That's a lesson I won't forget. By noon, Reed Carver's recorded confession had been anonymously leaked online. Within hours, his name was trending across social media platforms, and financial news networks were running special reports on the corporate sabotage scandal. Camille watched the fallout from her office, surrounded by her core team. Nia, Nadia, and James stood by her side as they monitored the unfolding situation. Reed has resigned, Nia reported, reading from her tablet. His statement claims he's stepping down to prevent further distraction from the company's mission. No apology, no admission, James noted with disgust. Typical. It doesn't matter, Camille replied. His reputation is in tatters. No board will touch him after this. Nadia looked up from her phone. Marissa's attorneys are requesting an emergency conference with the judge. They want to discuss potential settlement options. Camille smiled slightly. They've seen the social media post. And probably realized we have a lot more, Nia added. Our inbox is flooded with messages from other travelers and airport employees sharing similar experiences. The intercom buzzed. Ms. Hartley, came her secretary's voice. Walter Morris is on line 1. The room fell silent. This was the call they had been waiting for. Put him through, Camille directed, pressing the speaker button. Camille. Walter. Morris's voice filled the room, his tone clipped and formal. I believe we need to talk. I agree, Walter. Your office or mine? Neither. Neutral ground. The Meridian Club, private dining room, 1 hour. I'll be there. After the call ended, James looked concerned. You're not going alone, are you? Of course she is, Nia answered before Camille could speak. This is endgame. Walter knows it. Camille nodded. Prepare the revised acquisition proposal and alert our PR team to stand by. By this evening, we'll either have a deal or a war. The Meridian Club was old money personified. Founded in 1887, its membership still restricted to the city's elite. Walter Morris had been a member for 40 years, following in his father's and grandfather's footsteps. Camille, despite her wealth and position, would never have been invited to join. As she was escorted through the mahogany-paneled hallways, Camille noted the portraits lining the walls. All men, all white, all bearing the satisfied expression of unquestioned privilege. Walter waited in a private dining room, standing by a window that overlooked the club's immaculate gardens. At 73, he remained imposing, tall and straight-backed, with a full head of white hair and piercing blue eyes that had intimidated generations of business people. Camille, he said without offering his hand. Thank you for coming. Walter, she replied with a slight nod. Shall we get to it? They sat across from each other at a polished table. No pleasantries were exchanged, no offers of refreshment. This was business in its rawest form. Reed Carver was acting without my knowledge. Or approval, Walter began, his tone matter-of-fact. Whatever arrangements he claims were made with me were fabrications. Camille raised an eyebrow. Are you suggesting the text messages were fake, the airport security directives forged? I'm suggesting that an overzealous board member may have misrepresented my position in an attempt to advance his own interests. How convenient. Walter's expression hardened. Believe what you will. I'm here to discuss the future, not the past. The merger is no longer on the table, Camille interrupted calmly. Walter stared at her, momentarily speechless. Excuse me? The original merger agreement is null and void. Recent events have materially changed the circumstances under which it was negotiated. If you think you can walk away from this deal, I have no intention of walking away, Walter, Camille said, removing a folder from her briefcase and sliding it across the table. These are the new terms. Walter opened the folder, his expression shifting from annoyance to disbelief as he scanned the documents. This is an acquisition proposal. You're proposing to buy a controlling interest in Morris Technologies. 65% ownership, to be precise. At a fair market premium of 18% over current valuation. Walter's face flushed with anger. This is absurd. Morris Technologies has been independent for 87 years. We don't sell. Controlling interest, especially not to... He stopped abruptly, but the unspoken words hung in the air. To someone like me? Camille finished for him. A black woman from the South Side? Someone who didn't inherit her company but built it from nothing? Walter closed the folder with deliberate care. This conversation is over. Our legal team will be in touch regarding your breach of the original agreement. Before you go, Camille said as he stood to leave, you should know that an airport security officer has come forward. He's willing to testify under oath that Marissa Thompson received specific instructions regarding my arrival, instructions that came from someone claiming to represent Morris Technologies' interests. Walter froze. Additionally, Camille continued, we've obtained emails from within your organization discussing how my public humiliation could be leveraged to force a leadership change before the merger. The SEC takes a dim view of such tactics, Walter, as does the Justice Department. Walter slowly sat back down, his legendary composure visibly shaken. What do you want? Exactly what's in that folder. Morris Technologies becomes a subsidiary of Hartley Innovations. You retain a board seat and the title of Chairman Emeritus. Blake remains CEO of the Morris division. The combined company moves forward under the leadership structure outlined on page 3. And if I refuse? Camille met his gaze directly. Then tomorrow morning, I deliver a very detailed presentation to federal regulators about potential securities fraud, market manipulation, and civil rights violations. For a long moment, Walter said nothing. Then, almost imperceptibly, his posture changed, the slight slump of shoulders that signaled defeat. You'll need to adjust the transition timeline, he said finally, his voice subdued. And the compensation structure for current Morris board members. Minor details, Camille agreed. We can have legal teams work through those points. Walter nodded once, then stood again. This time, he extended his hand. You play a ruthless game, Ms. Hartley. Camille stood and shook his hand firmly. I learned from watching men like you, Mr. Morris. The difference is I'm playing for more than just profit. I'm playing for everyone who's ever been told they don't belong at the table. An hour later, Camille walked into the courthouse where Judge Sandra Perkins was hearing emergency motions related to Marissa Thompson's lawsuit. The courtroom fell silent as she made her way to the front, where Nadia waited alongside Marissa's attorneys. As proceedings began, an unexpected witness was called. Michael Turner, an airport security supervisor who had been on duty the morning of the incident. Ms. Thompson was instructed to flag Ms. Hartley's documents for additional screening, Turner testified, his voice steady despite his obvious nervousness. This came from upper management. We were told there were security concerns about her credentials. Had there been any actual security alerts regarding Ms. Hartley? Nadia asked. No, ma'am. None. Were you aware of similar directives regarding other passengers? Turner hesitated, then straightened his shoulders. Yes. There was an unofficial policy to give additional scrutiny to passengers who didn't look like they belonged in first class or private aviation. Most were people of color or individuals dressed casually despite having premium tickets. Murmurs spread through the courtroom. Judge Perkins called for order, then turned to Marissa's attorneys. Do you wish to cross-examine? They declined, and moments later requested a recess to confer with their client. When court resumed, Marissa Thompson herself approached the podium. I'd like to withdraw my lawsuit, she said, her voice barely audible. And I want to apologize to Ms. Hartley. I was following orders, but that doesn't excuse my behavior. Judge Perkins looked to Camille. Ms. Hartley, do you wish to proceed with your countersuit? Camille stood. Your Honor, I didn't file this countersuit for personal vindication. I filed it to expose a pattern of discrimination that affects countless travelers. I'll withdraw my personal claims against Ms. Thompson, but I request that the claims against the airport authority proceed. So ordered, Judge Perkins replied. We'll reconvene next week to address the institutional claims. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed around Camille. She delivered a powerful statement. I didn't fight my way from food stamps and foster care to fold under power plays. I don't just belong in this room. I own this room, and I intend to make it bigger and more inclusive for everyone who comes after me. As she walked to her waiting car, her phone buzzed with a text from Naya. It's done. Walter signed. We own Morris Technologies. Camille smiled as she slid into the back seat. The chess game was over. Checkmate. 6 months had passed since the acquisition of Morris Technologies, and the business world was still adjusting to the seismic shift. The massive atrium of Hartley Global's new headquarters buzzed with energy as employees and media gathered for a special announcement. Camille stood backstage, reviewing her notes one final time. She wore a deep blue suit today, a deliberate choice that symbolized the merging of Hartley's innovative spirit with Morris's established legacy. 2 minutes, Naya said, appearing at her side. In the month since the acquisition, Naya had stepped confidently into her new role as Vice President of Strategic Initiatives. The board members are all seated. Blake just arrived. And Walter? Conspicuously absent, as expected. Nia handed Camille a tablet displaying the latest market data. We're up another 3% this morning. That's 15% growth. Since the acquisition announcement, Camille nodded, handing back the tablet. Are we ready for the second part of the announcement? Everything's in place. The team is standing by. The lights dimmed briefly. Their cue. Camille took a deep breath and walked onto the stage with measured confidence. Camera flashes erupted as she approached the podium, her image projected on. Massive screens throughout the atrium. Good morning, she began, her voice strong and clear. Thank you all for being here today. 6 months ago, Hartley Innovations acquired Morris Technologies in what many called an unprecedented move in our industry. Today, I'm excited to announce the next chapter in our evolution. She paused, letting the anticipation build. Effective immediately, we are restructuring as Hartley Global, with 3 distinct divisions: Hartley Innovations, Morris Technologies, and our newest venture, Hartley Foundation, a $500 million fund dedicated to supporting underrepresented founders in technology. Applause rippled through the audience as the new corporate logo appeared on the screens, a modern design that honored both companies' legacies while looking firmly toward the future. This isn't just about changing our name or structure, Camille continued. It's about redefining what success looks like in our industry. For too long, technology has been shaped by a narrow segment of society. The Hartley Foundation will ensure that the next generation of innovations reflects the full spectrum of human experience and need. As Camille outlined the specifics of the foundation, she noticed a familiar face in the third row. Vanessa Winters, the former Morris Technologies executive who had approached her at the Parker Hotel. Their eyes met briefly, Vanessa's expression unreadable. After the presentation, as the crowd mingled during the reception, Vanessa made her way to Camille. Impressive pivot, she said, accepting a glass of champagne from a passing server. From target to acquirer to philanthropist in less than a year, you continue to surprise, Camille. I'm just getting started, Camille replied with a slight smile. Though I admit, I was surprised to see you here today. Vanessa glanced around to ensure they weren't being overheard. I've been watching your moves closely. What you did with Morris, it's never been done before, not like this. There's a first time for everything. Indeed. Vanessa seemed to hesitate, then continued in a lower voice. I underestimated you. Many of us did. That won't happen again. Is that a warning or a compliment? Perhaps both. Vanessa sipped her champagne. I'm leaving Archer next month, taking a position heading up European operations for Global Tech Partners. Camille raised an eyebrow. Interesting move. They're making significant inroads in emerging markets, which is precisely why I wanted to speak with you. Vanessa set down her glass. Your vision for the foundation is admirable, but if you're serious about global impact, you'll need strong international partnerships, particularly in regions where American companies typically struggle. The conversation shifted, becoming more specific and strategic. By the time they parted ways 30 minutes later, an unlikely alliance had begun to form. Vanessa's insights into breaking international markets could prove invaluable, and her network of contacts throughout Europe and Asia opened doors that might otherwise remain closed. Later that afternoon, as Camille reviewed the day's events with her executive team, Nia mentioned the lengthy conversation with Vanessa. Should we be concerned? she asked. Given her history with Morris and Archer, her motives might be complicated. Everyone's motives are complicated, Camille replied, including our own. But sometimes the most valuable insights come from those who once underestimated you. They've learned an expensive lesson. The following week brought another unexpected development. While visiting a STEM education center that Hartley Global was supporting, Camille encountered a familiar face. Jasmine, the young girl from the airport who had recognized her months earlier. "Ms. Hartley," Jasmine exclaimed, her eyes wide with excitement. "I can't believe you're here." Camille smiled warmly. "Jasmine, right? It's good to see you again. Are you part of the program here?" "Yes, my mom signed me up after," the girl hesitated. "After what happened at the airport. She said I should learn from women like you." Jasmine's mother approached, extending her hand. "Ms. Hartley, I'm Karen Williams. I want to thank you for how you handled that situation. The video I took, I never expected it to become what it did." "Sometimes the most powerful statements are the ones we make when we think no one is watching," Camille replied, shaking her hand. "Your daughter made quite an impression on me that day." After chatting with them for a few minutes, Camille had an idea. "Jasmine, how would you like a tour of our headquarters? See where all the innovation happens?" The girl's face lit up. "Really? Can I?" Arrangements were made for the following week. When the day arrived, Camille personally guided Jasmine through the building, introducing her to engineers, designers, and executives. The girl asked insightful questions about technology and business that impressed everyone she met. At the end of the tour, Camille brought Jasmine to her office, a spacious corner suite with panoramic views of the city. "What do you think?" Camille asked as Jasmine stared wide-eyed at the space. "It's amazing," the girl breathed. "This is where you work every day?" "This is where I work now," Camille corrected gently. "But I started in a tiny apartment with just a laptop and an idea. The journey matters as much as the destination." She led Jasmine to her desk and opened a drawer, removing a small box. Inside was a sleek tablet with the Hartley Global logo. "This is for you," Camille said, handing it to Jasmine. "It has special software that will help you learn coding and digital design, the kind of tools I wish I'd had at your age." Jasmine accepted the gift with trembling hands. "Thank you, Ms. Hartley." Camille placed a hand on the girl's shoulder. "One day you'll sit in a bigger office than mine. Remember that when things get tough." After Jasmine and her mother left, Camille found herself reflecting on her own journey. From foster care to founding a company, from being dismissed in boardrooms to acquiring one of the industry's oldest firms. Each obstacle had strengthened her resolve rather than diminishing it. That evening, she convened a special meeting with her core leadership team to announce a significant internal reorganization. Several longtime executives who had remained neutral during the crisis were being promoted to key positions. Others who had quietly enabled the old power structures were being transitioned out. "We're not just changing the leadership chart," Camille explained as they reviewed the plans. "We're changing the culture. Hartley Global will be defined not just by what we build, but by who builds it and how we treat each other in the process." Nia, now seated at Camille's right hand as a full executive vice president, nodded in agreement. "The old guard is already calling it a purge." "Let them," James responded. "They had their chance to stand up when it mattered." As the meeting concluded, Camille's assistant announced an unexpected visitor, a producer from Landmark Documentaries, a prestigious film company known for its thoughtful exploration of business and social issues. "They want to tell your story," her assistant explained. "The journey from the airport incident to the acquisition and beyond. They're calling it ID, Identity and Power in Corporate America." Camille considered the proposal carefully. "Tell them I'll meet with them on one condition: they tell the whole truth. The good, the bad, the betrayals, the mistakes, all of it." 2 days later, as Camille was reviewing the documentary proposal, she received news that stunned her. The State Bar Association had agreed to review her mother's disbarment case based on new evidence Nadia's team had uncovered. Records that had been missing for decades had suddenly resurfaced, showing clear evidence of tampering with witness statements in the original ethics investigation. "They can't give her back her career," Nadia said gently, as Camille absorbed the news. "But they can restore her name and legacy. She'd be proud of you, Camille." That night, Camille visited her mother's grave for the first time in months. The simple headstone read, Patricia Marie Hartley, 1958-1994, Justice Seeker, Beloved Mother. "We did it, Mom," Camille whispered, placing fresh flowers beside the stone. "They tried the same playbook they used on you, but this time we rewrote the ending." As spring turned to summer, Hartley Global's influence continued to expand. The foundation funded its first cohort of 25 founders, providing not just capital, but mentorship and access to Hartley's vast network of industry connections. Among the developments that surprised many observers was a handwritten letter Camille received from Marissa Thompson, the airport employee whose actions had triggered the entire chain of events. "I'm writing from Lakeside Recovery Center," the letter began. "After everything happened, I lost my way for a while. The truth is, I was bitter long before you walked up to my counter that day. I targeted you because you represented everything I thought I could never have: success, confidence, respect. I'm working to understand why I lashed out as I did. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that your response to my cruelty has made me rethink everything. Thank you for seeing the bigger picture when I couldn't." Camille didn't respond directly, but she did make an anonymous donation to the Lakeside Recovery Center's scholarship program for women rebuilding their lives after addiction or mental health crises. Meanwhile, the impact of Camille's stand continued to ripple outward. The airport authority, facing mounting pressure from the lawsuit and public opinion, announced a comprehensive review of its security practices. The result was the implementation of what they called the Camille Protocol, a new anti-bias initiative that included regular training, anonymous testing, and quarterly audits of passenger treatment. Similar protocols were being adopted at airports across the country, and Camille was invited to consult on their development. What had begun as a personal humiliation was transforming into institutional change that would affect millions of travelers. By early fall, Camille received an unexpected invitation: a private dinner at the White House with the president and a select group of business leaders to discuss economic opportunity and inclusion in the technology sector. As she read the invitation, her phone rang. The caller ID showed unknown, but the voice was immediately recognizable. Ms. Hartley said, the smooth-cultured tones of William Lancaster, CEO of Global Finance Partners, the world's largest investment bank. "I hope I'm not interrupting." "Not at all, Mr. Lancaster. This is an unexpected pleasure. I'll be direct. I've been watching your moves with great interest. The acquisition, the foundation, the restructuring, brilliant work. But I'm calling because I believe you might be interested in a larger conversation about changing the system from the very top." Camille smiled to herself. The game was evolving, moving to an even bigger board. "I'm listening," she said, already calculating her next move. The East Room of the White House glowed with warm light as America's most powerful business leaders, politicians, and thought leaders mingled before the evening's formal dinner. Camille moved through the crowd with practiced ease, exchanging greetings and brief conversations while observing the intricate dance of power and influence happening around her. President Sarah Mitchell spotted her from across the room and made her way over, flanked by aides who discreetly stepped back as she approached. "Ms. Hartley," the president said warmly, extending her hand. "I'm delighted you could join us tonight." "The honor is mine, Madam President," Camille replied, shaking her hand firmly. "I've been following your journey with great interest." "President," Mitchell continued, lowering her voice slightly, "what you've accomplished this past year goes beyond business success. You've sparked important conversations about who belongs in positions of power and how we treat each other along the way." "Those conversations were long overdue," Camille said. The president nodded thoughtfully. "I'd like to hear more of your perspective. Would you join me for a brief private conversation before dinner?" Minutes later, Camille found herself in a small, study adjacent to the East Room. The president gestured to a comfortable chair and took a seat across from her. "Off the record," President Mitchell began. "I'd like your thoughts on legacy, resilience, and reinvention. Not just for businesses, but for institutions, for our country." For the next 20 minutes, Camille shared her insights drawn from her own experiences, the obstacles she'd overcome, the lessons she'd learned, and her vision for a more inclusive economic future. She spoke candidly about the structures that maintained inequality and the courage required to challenge them. As she spoke, Camille noticed the president taking mental notes, occasionally nodding in agreement or asking a clarifying question. By the time they rejoined the dinner, something had shifted between them, a mutual recognition of purpose that transcended their different spheres of influence. The formal dinner proceeded with the expected speeches and toasts, but the real conversations happened in the margins, brief exchanges and quiet agreements that would shape policy and business decisions for months to come. Later that evening, as Camille was preparing to leave, an aide approached with a sealed envelope. "The president asked me to give you this personally," he said. Inside was a handwritten note. "Your words tonight moved this room to action. This is just the beginning of our conversation." On the flight back home the following morning, Camille found herself reflecting on her journey. Images flashed through her mind like scenes from a film, a 14-year-old girl in foster care, sketching designs in a worn notebook, dreaming of building something that mattered. A young entrepreneur working through the night in a basement apartment, fueled by ramen noodles and determination, coding the first version of what would become her company's flagship product. The crushing disappointment of early rejections from investors who couldn't see past her gender and race to recognize the value of her innovations. The triumph of her first major contract, celebrated in a borrowed conference room with a team of just 5 people. The gradual climb from obscurity to recognition, each milestone hard-won against skepticism and bias. And then the moment that changed everything, her ID sliding across the airport floor, a public humiliation that became the catalyst for her greatest victory. The plane began its descent, bringing Camille back to the present. Her phone buzzed with a text from Nia. "Urgent news. Call when you land." An hour later, Camille was in her office, listening as Nia explained the situation. "Global Ventures Partners has made an offer," Nia said, sliding a folder across the desk. "They want to acquire Hartley Global for $28 billion. That's a 47% premium over our current market cap." Camille opened the folder and skimmed the terms. The offer was extraordinary, not just in its financial generosity, but in the autonomy it promised her and her leadership team. "What do you think?" Nia asked when Camille finally looked up. "I think," Camille replied carefully, "that some things you can't price." She closed the folder and handed it back. "Draft a respectful decline. We've only just begun what we set out to do. This company isn't for sale, at any price." The following week brought another unexpected opportunity. A young founder named Talia Brooks requested a meeting through Hartley Foundation's mentorship program. Her startup, focused on AI-driven healthcare accessibility for underserved communities, showed remarkable promise, but needed guidance on scaling responsibly. As Talia presented her vision in Camille's office, the parallels were unmistakable. The same fire, the same determination to solve problems others ignored, the same obstacles in securing funding despite a clearly valuable innovation. "Your pitch is compelling," Camille said when Talia finished. "But your financial projections need strengthening, and your go-to-market strategy doesn't address regulatory hurdles in your target regions." Talia's face fell slightly. "So you're not interested in investing?" "I didn't say that," Camille replied, with a slight smile. "I'm saying I see potential that needs refinement. Instead of simply writing a check, I'd like to work with you directly for the next 6 months. Weekly meetings, access to our resources, introductions to key partners." Talia's eyes widened. "You want to personally mentor me? But surely your time is mine to allocate as I choose," Camille finished for her. "Sometimes the most valuable investment isn't capital. It's experience shared at the right moment." The news of Camille's decision to personally mentor selected founders rather than simply funding them sent ripples through the venture capital world. It set a new precedent that other successful entrepreneurs began to follow, creating a shift in how the next generation of innovators was supported. This approach proved especially valuable when, 3 months later, Camille learned that Reed Carver was attempting to re-enter the industry under a new venture called Phoenix Capital. Using a network of former associates and carefully managed PR, he was positioning himself for a comeback, deliberately distancing himself from the scandal that had ended his time at Hartley. Rather than confronting him publicly, Camille chose a more subtle approach. She quietly arranged meetings with key investors Reed was courting, sharing detailed documentation of his past actions without commentary. She didn't need to attack him. The facts spoke for themselves. Within weeks, Phoenix Capital's funding dried up, and Reed's attempted resurrection failed before it truly began. No public battles, no media spectacle, just the quiet, effective exercise of truth and influence. As the anniversary of the airport incident approached, Camille made a significant personal decision. She purchased the abandoned building that had once housed the community library where Mr. Bradford had first recognized her potential and given her that first coding book. The neighborhood had fallen on hard times, with few resources for local youth. Working with architects and education specialists, Camille transformed the space into the Bradford Center for Technology and Literacy, a state-of-the-art facility offering free classes, access to cutting-edge technology, and mentorship programs for children and teens from underserved communities. At the center's opening ceremony, Camille invited Mr. Bradford, now in his 70s, but still sharp-minded and passionate about education. "I never could have imagined this," he said, looking around the gleaming new facility with tears in his eyes. "All those years ago when I handed you that Python book, you saw something in me that I couldn't yet see in myself," Camille finished for him. "That's what we're offering here, the chance for young people to discover their potential before the world tells them what's impossible." The center became a model for similar initiatives across the country, with Hartley Foundation providing matching funds for communities wanting to replicate its success. Meanwhile, Nia's own story came full circle in an unexpected way. During a foundation event, she shared with Camille that she had once been turned away from a prestigious law school despite excellent qualifications, told that she lacked legacy connections, essential for success in the field. "That's why I shifted to business," Nia explained. "But sometimes I wonder how my life might have been different." 2 months later, Camille surprised her by establishing the Nia Taylor Scholarship at that same law school, a full-ride opportunity specifically for first-generation students with leadership potential but without traditional legacy advantages. By the time the documentary about Camille's journey premiered at a major film festival, much of the business world had already been transformed by her example. The film, unflinching in its portrayal of both the discrimination she faced and the strategic brilliance of her response, became required viewing in business schools across the country. The final scene showed Camille boarding a private jet. No longer the target of discrimination, but a global business leader headed to Geneva for a summit on ethical AI development, where she would deliver the keynote address. As viewers watched her ascend the stairs to the aircraft, her voice played in voiceover. "They thought throwing my name on the floor would break me. They forgot. I pick things up, and I build with them." The screen faded to black, but Camille Hartley's legacy continued to unfold in boardrooms, classrooms, and communities around the world. A powerful reminder that true success isn't measured by what you acquire, but by what you transform along the way. Was it really about an ID thrown on the floor, or about who gets to decide who belongs at the table? Like, subscribe, and share for more stories that challenge the rules of power and success.